Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. Welcome to English Grade 7 video lecture series. I hope that you're doing well. Students, today we will talk about a student's learning outcome which is of oral communication or oral competency. So, we know that when we are talking about and when we are learning oral communication, we are not only talking about speaking but also listening, and we are following certain rules as well. So today we will talk about specifically about learning and understanding and using rhetorical or rhetorical questions in our speech. Or even when we are listening to such speech, we need to know that this is a rhetorical question. It has a different take than those regular questions. So let's talk about the student's learning outcome. We will develop the ability to ask rhetorical questions for a range of audiences. So we know that when we are speaking, when we are communicating, we are doing it for different purposes. When we are speaking, we have different audiences and they have different levels and we have different understandings with our audience. So we will see that when we are speaking, we can pose and ask rhetorical questions. And what are rhetorical questions? We will see it about in the next slides. Here is your vertical linkage, and students, think about it. Are all questions supposed to be answered? Does every question has an answer? What do you think? Think about it. Have you ever asked questions not to receive any answers, but for other purposes? Now, usually questions are supposed to answers. They are linked with answers. But there are some questions, dear learners, that do not require any kind of answer. And why we ask the questions then? We ask them to emphasize on our point, to prove our point and make our statement stronger. That's why we pose these questions, but we do not require and we do not expect any answer. They are sounding very different to you. We will learn about them in a minute, and then you can use rhetorical questions in your speech and in your writing. Rhetorical questions. A rhetorical question is a question that is asked to make a point or provoke or make somebody think or provoke a thought rather than to get an answer. So, what is the purpose of rhetorical question? To make a point, to make your point and your argument stronger, and to make the listeners or your audience think about it. So, in order to fulfill these two purposes, we use questions that are in the form of rhetorics. Rhetorics is very much important in oral communication. The speaker or writer already knows the answer. That's why there is no requirement or expectation to get an answer. And it is used to engage the audience or the listeners, emphasize a point, or to persuade them, to make them think and make them agree with your point or your idea. That's why we pose these rhetorical questions. Now, where can you use these rhetorical questions? You can use them in your speech, in your debates, you can use them in your conversations. Writers use them in their stories, in their literary and non-literary texts, which means fictional and non-fictional texts. Both can contain rhetorical questions. They are very important to learn to increase your oral competency as well. Now, let's look at some different headings and different uses of rhetorical questions and why we use them with examples. First one is to emphasize a point, to prove a point. For example, here is a question, but you can see that this does not require any kind of answer. It is just for putting emphasis and weight on the point. Isn't it obvious that we all need clean water to survive? This is a question because it is ending with an interrogative punctuation aid or punctuation cue, which is a question mark. So, this is an interrogative statement. It is beginning with, it is actually negative interrogative. Is it not obvious that we all need clean water to survive? Yes, we need. It is the basic necessity and requirement. So, the writer or the speaker is actually making the readers or the listeners that clean water is very important for our survival. Now, if I say that clean water is important for our survival, this is a very basic statement. But if you convert it into a rhetorical question, you can say, isn't it obvious that we all need clean water to survive? The answer lies in the question itself, and that's why we do not need any answer. And if you are posed such questions, you should not give any answer. Yes, it is obvious. Next one is, who wouldn't want to live in a peaceful world? Yes, everybody wants to live in a peaceful world. But this is also a rhetorical question. You do not give any answers and you do not expect any answer from your audience. What is the answer? The answer is in the question. Who wouldn't want to live in a peaceful world? Obviously, everybody wants to live in a peaceful world. So this is a rhetorical question. There should be no answer given to it and we do not expect any answer. Now, this statement, this question is talking about bringing peace in the world for people. But it is posed like a rhetorical question. Second important purpose is to provoke thought, to make the listeners and readers think about it. Why do we always wait until it is too late to take action? So, when you are talking about it, why do we always wait until it's too late to take action? So, it means that we should not wait and we should take actions immediately when the problem arises. So, this is the thought that the speaker wants to provoke in the minds of the listeners. Next example is, if not now, when? So, it means that we should do it now. Otherwise, when are we going to do it? What is the right time? We are already too late. So, this is a rhetorical question and the listeners will think, yes, now is the time. Now is the time to take action. They do not answer the question and the speaker also does not want any answer. This is provoking a thought in your mind that if you don't do it now, then when are you going to do it? So this is an example of rhetorical question. Now, the third purpose that we talked about at the start is to persuade the listeners or the audience using rhetorical question. For example, can we really afford to ignore climate change any longer? It means that the speaker is persuading the listeners to do not ignore climate change. It is already very much late, so you do not wait for anything to happen. Just start taking action against climate change. Secondly, how can we achieve success without hard work? This means that the speaker wants the listeners to do hard work to make achievements and be successful. So there are no answers for such questions. They are for persuasion and to persuade the audience. Next is to highlight the absurdity of a situation. If a situation is very much serious, then or it is absolutely absurd, then you pose rhetorical question like, do you really expect me to believe that? If something is unbelievable, then you can say, do you really expect me to believe that? Then why would anyone want to hurt a defenseless animal? Nobody wants to do that. So this is also a very absurd kind of situation. We also pose rhetorical questions to express frustration or disbelief. For example, what more do you want from me? Or how many times do I have to explain this? All right. So if your teacher says, can the class be quiet? It does not mean that you give a possible or posable question, a probable answer, because the question is not for taking answers, but they are used for showing emphasis and showing frustration also. Right. Now, after learning about all these rhetorical questions, now it's time to do your classroom activity, which talks about the task, which is to generate a list of rhetorical questions related to each topic. Be very much creative and think critically to formulate interesting questions related to the historical places in Pakistan, which is the main lesson. So these are all the different kinds of topics, and you have to generate rhetorical questions. This is the simulation link that can be played later on for extensive information and for your homework. All you have to do is think critically and pose as many rhetorical questions as you can, and keep in mind that they can be used for different purposes, for showing emphasis, to persuade the listeners, and to also provoke or evoke any emotion or thought in the audience. So start practicing these rhetorical questions. Do not answer them. Do not expect any answer as well. The resources are added for your understanding. I'll see you in the next video lesson. Take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.